This is Sajita, a domestic worker from Nepal. She spent 10 years in Lebanon working for a family but was only paid for 1 year and 9 months. Eventually, she had to return home without her money. Sajita's story is one shared by many domestic workers stuck in Lebanon's Kafala system. On paper, the jobs look promising: a sponsored visa, work in a private household, the chance to send money back home to your family. But without any legal frameworks protecting these workers, many are left vulnerable to abuse with nowhere to turn. And this is why the Kafala system is often described as a kind of modern-day slavery. It's estimated that around 250,000 domestic workers are living in Lebanon. They're overwhelmingly women, and most have migrated from sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. They're employed by Lebanese families to help with the cleaning, child-caring, and other household duties. Many live in the same household under the kafala or guardianship of the family. But this guardianship comes with strings. The employer oversees nearly all aspects of the worker's life, including their passport. This means domestic workers can't leave the country, rent a house, or apply for other work without the permission of their employer. On top of this, migrant domestic workers in Lebanon are excluded from the country's labour laws, meaning that they don't have access to the rights that Lebanese workers do, and they cannot seek legal action if their rights are infringed. Instead, they are governed entirely by the kafala system, and it's not just in Lebanon. This sponsorship system, whereby a worker's right to work and live is tied to their employer, is commonly practiced across the Arab world. Human rights groups have been fighting it for years, saying the system creates an extreme power imbalance that fuels exploitation and abuse.
The high degree of control over workers' lives under the kafala system has led to cases of human trafficking, forced labor, exploitation, and more. Human Rights Watch and local organizations frequently document the non-payment of wages, forced confinement, withholding of identity documents, excessive working hours, and verbal, physical, and sexual abuse.
In Lebanon, these poor conditions for migrant workers were magnified by the country's ongoing economic crisis. We spoke with This is Lebanon, an NGO helping foreign domestic workers in Lebanon and sharing their stories about the cases that they have seen.
We started in 2017 and we're a mixture of former migrant workers, migrant domestic workers, activists from about 7 or 8 different countries, actually. We just thought that we thought Lebanese needed to know what was going on because we didn't think that they actually had any idea of just how truly evil the kafala system was. So we thought, let's just tell their stories. But almost immediately, we became the hotline for domestic workers. So it wasn't just telling the stories, but people were contacting us saying, my sister hasn't been paid for X number of years, or the girl on the balcony in the apartment above me is getting beaten up, and just like a flood, actually, of people crying out for help. And so we didn't anticipate it, but we did become the hotline for domestic workers. Well, the Ministry of Labour hotline has never really worked, so it's not surprising, I guess. But lately, when we talk to employers, they actually have been empowered by the economic crisis because often they say that they've done her a favour by not throwing her out on the road like some other employers have done. At the start of the crisis, there was a problem of many domestic workers being dumped on the road or in front of the embassy. And so they actually think, in their own minds, I think they've totally justified it, that they've done her a favour, even if they're not paying her, by keeping her in the house. So it's really becoming tricky to negotiate the release of these women. Like the sense of entitlement that these employers have, that they fully have justified to themselves keeping her working for months and sometimes years without paying her. And even when we approach them, refusing to send her home, it's quite bewildering, to be honest.
Munagiri was working for years as a domestic worker in Lebanon and was the victim of violent and repeated abuse. This is a photo of her when she first arrived from Nepal in 2007, aged 28. And this is a photo of her when she left in April 2022. Giri's family says she wasn't paid for most of her 15 years of service and was enslaved by her Lebanese employer, unable to leave the country. At the age of 43, she was finally reunited with her children for the first time in 15 years. She had left some of them as toddlers. We spoke to Giri's daughter in Nepal about what happened to her mother.
My mother is madam. She's beating every day. Sometimes 1 day, 3 times, 4 times like this beating. Coming and slap their mouth sometimes. There's nothing to doing anything. Only here you see black. Here, you can see her experience. And I make medical report. When she is coming, I make medical report. Got your daughter angry, and this she got like this first the knife. When there is house, their madam is go outside. She lock key, and there is put also camera, and she monitor every time. When my mother going there, 2 months, 3 months, okay, she's not eating. She's also food. After 2 months, 3 months, there is. Start to not giving food, beating every time like this.
Middle East Eye contacted Giri's former employers in Lebanon but didn't get a response. A report published this year by the Anti-Racist Movement, another Lebanese NGO, says that between April 2020 and October 2021, at least 18 female domestic workers died under mysterious conditions. The report says many of these deaths were deemed as suicidal without actual or enough evidence. But those numbers could be much higher, and the lack of accountability is driving many workers to lose hope that they'll ever find justice in Lebanon.
We've recorded several cases of domestic workers that went to the police station seeking help because of abusive working conditions, and were returned to their employers or to their agents. So they go expecting help and they don't get it. So, I mean, often the police are part of the problem, they're not part of the solution. I mean, it's a suicide mission to go into Lebanon as a domestic worker now. And then the Lebanese agents, that's a whole different story. Like, we have recorded hundreds of stories of abuse by these agents. I mean, even the story a few years back of an agent stuffing an Ethiopian woman into the back of his car and her crying out for help in front of the embassy, that was caught on camera and went viral in all the international media because she died 3 days later. That guy's still in business. That agent's still operating. So, you know, if the government are not prepared to stop someone like that, then they obviously have no will to stop anyone. We've documented agents where domestic workers have died in their premises. I don't know what it takes for the Lebanese authorities to try and rein in the unlimited power that these agents have.
For years, stories of abuse against domestic workers in Lebanon have been making headlines. But accountability and change in legal framework did not happen, despite the public outcry. This video from 2020 was made by 34 women from Sierra Leone who were living in an apartment together in Lebanon after escaping the abuse of their employers. They made this song to send the world a message about their story, and that message is still relevant today.
They will beat us, they will kill us, there is no one to help us. We are walking without payment, there is no one to help us. They don't care for what we eat, they don't care for where we sleep.